So the goal of this session is to complete the story of authentication and authorization. And hopefully I want to spend most of the time on these two other remaining topics, which are delegated authentication and delegated authorization. Very exciting topics that I will be discussing. So first, let's just super quickly review where we stopped at. So if you recall, after we logged in, here's the login. We logged to our system, and we provided in this scenario an email and a password. And we asked the system, go ahead and let us in. And we get an ID token. You recall the story. And this ID token, the client will keep this ID token with it. And whenever it wants to access some protected routes, it will go ahead and add this ID token to the authorization header. If I access it, it should be okay. I'm able to access my users because I supplied the correct ID token. So to summarize, when I log in, I receive an ID token. When I want to access a secure route, I will send back this ID token in the authorization header. Here is my route. What I'm doing here, I'm saying if somebody comes to users, to /users, before you allow them to go to get the actual users, we let them go through a security check. This is called the middleware. So I am putting a function in between my route and my route handler. It's like a secure building. Before you can come into a secure building, there is a security guy at the door checking your ID. If your ID is correct or ID is valid, they will let you in. Otherwise, access will be denied. The ID token is nothing but there is a user object and it has a signature. So when I submit this ID token back to the server, what the server will do? Will verify this token. That this token has not been changed. And if this token has changed, the server will detect it. Yes. Remember, if I try to trick the server and change this even with one character, and I'll send this, the server will detect it and will say to me, invalid GWT token. How the server detects this? Through the signature. So in terms of implementation, this is how it works. So I'll go to the is authenticated. All I do, I get the authorization header from the headers associated with the request. And then if the ID token is not there, automatically I give you 401 immediately. I don't need to go further. You cannot go to the route. You are getting an exception, 401, unauthorized because you don't have a GWT token. Now, if you have a GWT token, remember the token is coming as a bearer space the token. So I split it using space, and I'm interested in the second part, which is the actual token. And then I will ask the GWT library. This is the 2.5 million download library, very famous one. I'll ask it, please go ahead and verify if this token is madrob or is it a valid one. Okay, so I'll say here is the ID token and here's the secret key. It will verify the signature. And I explained already how this works. Now this one does two birds, one stone. First, it verifies the signature is valid. Second, it basically extracts the user objects from this ID token. And the user object will be in this decoded token. The user object will be basically this one. This one here. By the way, the verification also checks this expiry time because the token has an expiry time. It can be for 20 minutes, for 1 hour, 1 day, depends on what the developer decided. So this verification verifies two things. It verifies the signature and it verifies the expiry. If those are valid, the system will know who the user is. Otherwise, if the verification failed, what will happen? An exception will be thrown and you get a 403 forbidden, invalid GWT token. Yeah, that's it. This is what's going on. And what this line is doing, this important line here, It's making the user object available for subsequent steps. So take a look at this. In the route, I hope now it's clear. So I'm putting here a security guy in front of my route. Nobody can jump here unless if they successfully pass this hurdle of security check. And what this security check does, it verifies the token. Verifies the token is valid, verifies the token is not expired, and then it extracts the user from the token. Then if you are lucky and everything you passed all you are now allowed to come to get users. Once you jump there, the story did not end yet. There is one more check. Yes? What is the last check I'm doing here? You must be admin before you can get this. So I'm getting here get request.user.role. If it is admin, yes, I give you what you asked for. Otherwise, you get 403 access denied. You see how the story goes with the authorization? Very nice, very elegant way of doing it. Very smooth way, very nice way of doing it. Really impressive. I hope you appreciate it, and you will definitely practice this in the lab. Okay, one more thing I want to show you before we move forward is I'm doing this verification on the server side by putting a middleware or a function that guarding my route. Nobody can access this route unless if they go through this successfully. This is done on the server side. I should also do this on the client side. Remember, authorization, as I discussed before, must be done on both sides, the client side and the server side. Now, on the client side, how we do it on the client side? So take a look at this. So if I log out here, and I'll try to trick the system, and I'll try to go to users. Did the system went to users? No way. I'll try to go to contacts. No way. Even the clients, you cannot trick the client. You are trying to go to some URL. What the client is doing to you? Routing you back to the login. You must log in first, then it will allow you. Take a look at this. If I do here users, /users, and if I log in now, no problem, yes. Because you're logged in, you get what you asked for. If you're not logged in, you cannot get here. So definitely there is something on the client side doing this. And this is done in the routing. This is done in the routing. So let me show you how it is done. We will not spend too much time on it because we have quite a packed agenda. Here it is. Here's my app. It's quite simple, very simple way of doing it. You see this route is not protected. /calculator is not protected. This is a route. If somebody comes to /calculator, give them the calculator. Nothing there, nothing secret. See here, I log out. If I know that there is a calculator here, calculator. Did the system ask me to log in? No way, who cares? It's just my little calculator here. No problem, you can access this. But you access users? No way. Why you're not allowed to access this? It's a protected route. You first log in, we know who you are, and then we allow you to access it. Okay, so how this is done, instead of using this route, I use protected route. And I will say what this protected route really means. Like, if the user is not authenticated yet, send them back to the login page. And also, I am saying here, by the way, these two parameters are defined in my app. So I'm saying this protected route will check if this is false, it will send me to the login page. Not only this, it will also check once even if the user is logged in, it checks whether the user is an admin. If the user is admin, it will allow me. Otherwise, it will not allow me. Yeah. So it's very simple way of doing it. Instead of using, you're already familiar with the React router. Instead of using a route, you will use protected route. And then you can optionally pass a role if it's applicable. For example, here, contacts is protected, but you don't need a particular role. As long as you logged in, you are good to go. But for the users, /users, not only login is required, also administrator role is required. Yes? Now, this protected route is not a built-in function. Unfortunately, it's not built-in React Router. It's a custom, it's an extension of the route. But the implementation, you can just, for your project and for whatever you want to do, you feel free to use it. Here is the protected route. You don't need to understand all the details here. So what it's doing here, if this property here is authenticated is false, it redirects you to the login. If it's true, then it will, if you already logged in, it checks whether the user role is one of the roles specified in the route. If everything goes okay, then the component will be rendered. Don't worry, it's a little bit quite advanced, but you can just use it as it is. But conceptually, all it's doing, it's checking. If the user is logged in, it will render the component. If the user is not logged in, it will redirect them to the login page. That's all it's doing. Now, all you do, you need to use it. The way you use it is very simple. It's exactly the same way as you use the route. Instead of using a route, you use protected route. That's all we're doing. Okay, in the lab, you will practice this, and hopefully it will be super clear. In here, you can see I created my own authentication system, my own login page. I have a login URL or a login web API to allow users to log in. But the issue here is login comes with a lot of headache. If I do the login myself and manage the login myself, it comes with a lot of headache. Not only the efforts invested into implementing this, but also I need to worry about if the user forget their passwords, I have to provide them some kind of system to reset their password. I have to worry about the passwords being hashed and salted, remember? Password being complex. People can hack into my system and steal passwords and so on. So it's a big headache. So it's not small headache. So that's why lately many people or many apps are throwing this headache out of the application and giving it to an identity providers, such as Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and so many other, Microsoft, of course. You can delegate the authentication to these services. You don't need to run your own authentication. You can allow users to log into your app using you can use it using what are known as social accounts. You can use one of your social accounts to log in. I'm sure we are all familiar with this. In many systems, you have the option either to create a local account on the app or to log in using one of your social media accounts. So in here, I'll just show you the experience of logging using Google and then show you how this is implemented, how you can implement this in your app. Okay, so here it is. Let me clear this. So I go ahead here, log in. Because I'm already logged in before, it will ask me which account you want to log in. Let me choose this account. Otherwise, it will give you a username and password. You type in your Google account, your password, and you are good to go. Here it is. I click this, and that's it. The system knows who I am. It will welcome me and everything. But I'm not allowed to access /users because I'm not an admin. Anyway, that's another story. But it recognizes who I am. Can you see it? Okay. And I can do whatever I want to do. Of course, users is protected because users has two things. You need to be logged in and you need to be administrator. If I try to go to users, say no, you are not authorized to access /users. I am doing it here on the client, and even if you try to bypass the client, the server will catch you. So let me show you now what's going in the background. So first of all, giving this authentication role or authentication task to one of the providers, we call it delegated authentication. You delegate it. You give it to some other provider to do it for you. And this delegated authentication is achieved using this standard called OpenID Connect. It took many years to develop, but now it's very mature. A lot of identity providers out there implement this standard protocol, and I will explain the essence of it. So this delegated authentication relies on this OpenID Connect protocol, and it's implemented by many identity providers such as Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and so on. And the way it works is this way, very simple. So first of all, your app, the first thing your app needs to register itself with the identity provider. So what you need to do, you need, for example, if you want to use Google Identity Provider, you as developer, you need to go to this URL. In case of Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter will have similar experience. You go there and you register your app. Here it is. If I go there, you will do this in the lab, but I will just show you my app that is registered. Here is a new project, and I will call it QU OpenID exam. I go ahead and create it. Once I create the app, because Google needs to know who is using their services, they get a project. Then within that project, I go ahead and create an OpenID, an OAuth client ID. I will explain what this OAuth means. OAuth client ID. Google will ask me, first of all, I'll tell Google a little bit about my app. Let's say I call it Hero app. You can upload the logo for your app if you want to. Now I create an open OAuth client ID. This is very important. Google is asking me, what type of app are you trying to build and use this authentication or delegated authentication? In our case, I'll be using it for web app, Hero app, OAuth clients. Okay, it tells me here what is the URL of your app. So basically, in my case, the URLs are, in my case, this is the URL. This is very important. I will explain why this is important. Yep, I'll type it here without this. And the server side, this is the server side of my app. The server side is listening on 3040. That's it. Once I do this, go ahead and create. What it does, it will give me this key. This key is very important. Without this key, I cannot delegate authentication to Google. So my app, to summarize, you will play with this in the lab. To summarize, before you can use OpenID as an application developer, you go and register an app. You register your app with Google. And at the end of the day, all these steps we saw, it gives you this Google client ID. This client ID is very important. You have to put it when you want to call Google to ask it to do the authentication for you. Okay? So once you do this, the rest is super simple. So let me show you exactly how this login is implemented. So what I'm doing, I am using, to make it simple, I didn't want to do it from scratch. I'm using a component, a React component that already has all the implementation built in. So there is this React component called the React Google Login. And what this React Google Login does, all it does, it gives me this new component called Google Login. What are the parameters these components take? The client ID. This client ID, I just showed you the story. You have to register your app and you get a client ID from Google. Now, when you log in, First of all, when you put this tag here on your login page, this tag will generate for you this button here. Can you see this button? This button is added to your UI by this component here. This is not my component. I didn't build this myself. This is npm install react Google login. Gives me this component. Yeah. Now, these components take parameters. These are the major parameters it takes. It takes a Google client ID that you get from Google once you register your app, and it takes two functions. You need to tell it when the login is successful, which function to call. When the login fails, which function to call. In this case, I'm using the same function for both cases. Here's my app. And then what I'll do, I provide the sign in using Google button. So the user clicks on that button, yes? When the user clicks on that button, that will bring the Google login page. The user will log in using their Google accounts. Once they log in, what Google will give us back? It will give us two pieces of information. One is the ID token and the access token. Now, the ID token has information about the user, their email, their first name, their last name. Typically, in most cases, what you will do, you take that ID token, you send it back to your server, and you store the user details in your own database. And then you return back JWT token. Now, let me explain what's going on here. Take a look at this. So when I click this button here, sign in using Google, I get this sign-in page. This is the Google page, it's not mine. Then I'll say, okay, log in using this. Google already authenticated, it sends me back this huge object here. What it has at the end of the day, two tokens, ID token, can you see it here? And an access token. Two major pieces of information. Yeah. It is sending it back to me to this address. Can you see what address? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why if you remember, when I registered my app, I must provide the callback address. Can you see it here? It's calling me back on this. And if I am doing it on the server side, if the server side will be calling back, if Google will be calling back the server side, it will be calling it on this address. Here's the ID token. Here it is. I'll copy this. I'll go to my inspector here. Go to debug. Paste it here. This is the JWT token. Remember, this ID token is JWT token. All it says, this is the header. Remember, JWT token is a standard format. This is the header, this is the signature. This signature is coming from Google, and this is what's coming from Google. Giving you my name, what else? My email, my profile image in this ID token. And it gives me a signature. Now, typically, once I get this ID token, I send it to my database. I send it to my server to add it to my database. Why do you think this is needed? Why this is typically people, when they get the ID token, they don't just use it. They go back to the server, store it in the database, and then return another JWT token, another ID token. They don't use the ID token coming from Google directly. For two major reasons. First of all, you know this, you see this ID here that's coming from Google. It does not have the role. When you log in Google, Google of course does not know your app, does not know your roles. So typically, when the users sign in, you might add them to the database and add their role. For example, if I log into this app, my role will be by default contributor, or could be normal user. Yeah, that's the first reason. The second reason, remember an ID token, when we log in, what do we use the ID token for? Later on, when we want to access other protected API, what do?
Verify.
We send the ID token with our request for the server to verify our ID token. Remember this? We just saw it at the beginning of the session. Remember, let me remind you, here it is. When I try to access users, what did I do? I sent the authentication token, or the ID token, sorry. Here it is. If I go here to Google, Mr. Google, this is what Google gave me. I take this, and I take it to my app, and say, my app, please, I want to access this token here. I want to access this URL, and this token is given to me by Google. Here it is. Can you please go ahead and let me in? What the system is telling me? Forbidden invalid GWT token. Why is it saying so? Why the server is not able to validate my token? Why our server is not able to validate the signature?
You don't know the key?
Thank you very much. You don't know the key. This key, who knows the key for this signature? No, this key. JWT token, from where this token came? From Google. Who generated this signature? Google. So the problem with this ID token, it's nice, we delegated the authentication, but unfortunately this token, we cannot use it within our application because we cannot verify it later on. That's why typically most application, okay, you log in using Google, we get your ID token, we know who you are, we know your email, we know everything about you. But we will typically store it in our database and generate another token. Why do we generate another token? So our app can verify it. Okay, so that's why after I logged in, if you look carefully here, I have something. This is what gets generated from my database. It has one. Can you see the difference? It has one more property, contributor. The role is contributor. This role did not come from Google. I added it when I added the user. And it has a signature. Can I verify this signature on my server?
Yes.
Of course. Why can I verify this signature on my server? I have the key. So that's why the most common usage, take a look at this, the most common usage, you go ahead and log in. Allow the user to log in through Google. Then what Google will give you back? Two things, an ID token and an access token. Typically, what do you do with this ID token? You send it to the server side. The server side will extract some user details interested in, first name, last name, maybe email, and so on. And it will create a local user. And it will add, if there is a role or there is any extra information needed, it will add it to the user. And then what the server will do? Generate an ID token and send it back to the app. The reason why it does this, because this newly generated ID token can be verified later on. Here it is what's going on here. So what I do here, once you log in using Google, I will call this add OpenID user. And then I will check if my database already have this user. If my database already have this user, I just get this user and generate a GWT and return the JSON token. If my database does not have this user already, I add it. You see here, I set the contributor here, and then I return the token of that user. You can, of course, in here, if it's already exists, you can update if you wish. You can update the details. But in here, I'm just doing a lazy implementation. If you already logged in the past, I just retrieve your user details from my database and then return that as a JSON web token. If you never logged in before, I will add you and I will add to your user a profile. I will add in this scenario one attribute, which is the role in this scenario. But in real life, you might add other things. You might add, for example, remember how many times you visited, what's the last time you visited, I can update my user profile. So I know what, I can send you later an email. It has been long time you never came back. Please come and visit our website. We have new content. The only thing this saves you from having the headache of managing the password. There is no password you need to worry about. Your user account does not have a password. Who manages the password in this scenario? Google manages the password. But in reality, you still keep the user account for many other reasons, because you still need to know your users. It would be very sad for you to have an app without knowing your users. This delegated authentication really liberates us from, what is the real advantage? Liberates us from password management. And make it convenient for users. They don't need to remember many passwords. Very convenient for users. Last thing, what is the story of this access token? Why do we have this access token? In case I need more information, although Google did a good job, I'm so surprised that they already gave us so much information already just by login. In 99% of cases, this is more than enough. Giving me the first name, last name, even the profile picture. The ID token is more than enough in most cases. But what I want to say, you can also, in some scenarios, I tried it with Google, it didn't work. You can ask for phone number, you can ask for address, you can ask for other gender, you can ask for other details. Now, if in the ID token, these details will not be given to you in the ID token. These details, you have to go back to another URL. Here is the URL here. It's called OpenID googleapi.com user info. And what you do is, for you to access this and get more information about the user, what should you give this URL? You have to give it the access token. So if I go here, here's my access token Google gave me. If I try to access this URL, take a look at this. If I try to access without authorization, without the authorization header, you know what I will get. 401, Google did a good job. They are using 401 unauthenticated or unauthorized. Now, if I add this, the same thing, I do bearer, space, and paste my access token here. Is my access token? Yes, and I get more info. In this case, it didn't add anything more, but I could have asked for more. I tried to ask for more. I tried to ask for phone address. Yes, here. You can ask for address, phone. Here's the standard. Here's what the standard says. Yeah. Here's what the standard says. You can ask, for example, middle name, preferred username, website, date of birth, phone number, address, and so on. You can ask for. I try to ask for this. Google does not give this. I try to ask. By the way, if you want to say how you should have asked me, how do you ask Google to give you more stuff? The way you ask user to give you more stuff is you go to your login page. Here it is. Login component. Login component. Here it is. Login component. Here it is. Login. And you come here and you say one more parameter here called scope. And in here, you place one of these strings. If you want to get a phone, you basically copy this one and put it here. This is asking Google to give you more stuff beyond the normal profile. Now, the standard says the basic information about the user, you will get it in which token? In the ID token. Yeah, the basic information you will get it in the ID token. Extra information, how you will get it? You will have to have another call to this extra URL and you pass the access token. Can you see here the standard? But in most cases, the ID token is more than enough. If I go to security, and if I go to the apps that I authorized, you remember when I authorized the app, I am authorizing my Hero app to access my accounts, my contacts. I remove the access. Of course, the user can go back and remove access. Now, if I log out, and now I want to access your contacts. Now I'm getting beyond your login. And so here, it says you have insufficient permissions. But I can ask you to give me permissions to access your contacts. Now, the way I do that, in the scope, last thing, here it is. Here's my contacts. Here it is. I ask you to log in, but I'll ask you, please, can you give me access to your contacts? I put this in the scope, saying, please allow me access to your contact. Yes, this is because my app is not verified by Google. If my app is verified and they know this is a genuine app, they will not show this message. Okay, go, no problem, I trust this app. You see now it asks you to give permission. Says to you, Hero app will be able to see, edit, download, permanently delete your contacts. Yes, we trust it. That's it. It gives you access to the contacts and you can see the contacts. What do you think Google gave us? An access code. Hopefully it is here. Can you see it? I can use this access token, sorry. This access token. I go to my, here, get contacts, send. That's it. I get my account. Not only this, if I want, I can even add an account for you, add a contact on your behalf. Take a look at this. Here is my header. Go to this. Take a look at this. Go back here. Let me just show you. I can go back, delete one of your accounts. It's gone. I'm deleting on your behalf. And I'm going back to Postman because I was lazy to create one. Send. I created a new contact on your behalf. It should have, yes, it just didn't refresh. You ended up with 2. All I wanted to show you with this OpenID, with this OAuth, not only you can do delegated authentication, you can do delegated authorization. The user is authorizing you to access some data that they have in Google, and you have now full access to that data. You can, let's say, contacts, you can add, delete, and get them.